Apple can be so Apple sometimes. You know what I mean? Like when they don't let you choose which lights appear in Control Center. Or when it pauses iCloud syncing to save battery life. Or how iCloud.com has a web app for everything except messages. Or how HomePods don't let you play anything but Apple Music. Or when I click on a location link but it insists I use Apple Maps. Or when I copy paste to Google Maps and every time I have to allow paste. Or when autocorrect insists I'm saying duck when they know I'm saying. But by far the most Apple thing about iOS 17 is contained in their brand new standby mode, and specifically the always on display, which turns out should be called the sometimes on display. At WWDC last year, I got probably too excited when I saw an iPhone with iOS 17 in standby mode. Almost as excited as I got when they announced their always on display, something I missed from owning a Google Pixel phone. That and USB-C were two things that I missed most from my Android days, and hey, now we have both. But the ability to turn your iPhone into an alarm clock display with customizable widgets really blew my Apple fanboy mind. I literally haven't owned an alarm clock for at least a decade. For some reason I prefer the phone, and never being sure if Do Not Disturb mutes the alarm too. But the lack of an always-on display made it impossible to actually use your iPhone as a convenient way to check the time in the middle of the night, against the advice of most sleep professionals. So I was understandably excited when standby mode debuted at WWDC, and understandably crushed when I started using it. When you place your phone on the MagSafe charger and twist it to the side, the time blinks on. And when you're trying to sleep, it transitions to a very dim red, perfect for a dark room. But I noticed something when I used it for the first time. After tossing and turning a little trying to fall asleep, I tried to check the time, but couldn't, because the always-on display was off. Confused, I opened up the settings app, and there it was. Next to the words always on, it said, when always on is enabled, the display will intelligently turn off. Huh? Do I need to look up what always on means? Is this like when 24-hour fitness closes nightly, or the judgment-free zone is strictly enforced through judgment? And this problem is not new. Before standby came out, the phone had the always on display, and when I tried to use the always on display to quickly check the time as I'm falling asleep at night, it also turned off. The display will turn off automatically to save battery life when not in use. When not in use? What the hell do they think an always on display is for? If I'm using the phone, the always on display is off. Maybe I get too worked up about this, but it's just such a simple thing that should be possible. Like, what are they saving me from? Did sleep experts visit Cupertino and threaten Tim Cook? Android phones just do it. On my Pixel phone, it was just on, and it just stayed on, and that was it. I really think Apple doesn't understand why we want an always-on display. Like, when it first came out and it showed your wallpaper. No thanks, I just want high contrast text. The always-on display is about utility, not beauty. Luckily they listened, just that once, and added an option to turn the wallpaper off, which I did right away. Anyway, in an eternal quest to figure out why an always-on display would turn off, an engineer on Twitter told me that it does it to prevent screen burn-in since iPhones use OLED screens. Fine. I guess that's a reason. But Android phones have been getting around this for a decade now by doing things like moving the display a little bitty bit every so often. And how about just letting me decide if I want to risk burn-in? I want to risk it. Just put in a little disclaimer. No big deal. So when Apple says always on display, what they really mean is always on unless Apple thinks they should turn it off for your own good. Cool.